Before we get started, though, Mike, for folks who aren't necessarily familiar with you just yet, would you mind sharing a little bit about yourself, how you came to real estate, and what your journey has been like so far?
Yeah, definitely. So I was previously an engineer and was recognized as one of the top employees of 60,000 in my first year, but realized that that was never going to get me to the level that I wanted in life in terms of the time freedom and the money freedom. Around that time, I was buying my first house, and typical story, like most agents, the agents maybe didn't do the best job, and I thought I could probably do this better. But for me, I really wanted to learn the core components of what an entrepreneur needs to know, which is marketing, branding, and sales. And real estate was one of the lowest barrier to entry opportunities that allowed you to develop those skills. And so I got into real estate, 2,500 in my bank account, and I said, well, what can I do? And the opportunities were anything that was free, right? And so for me, I door knocked for 3 hours a day, 7 days a week for my first 6 months in the snow up here in Calgary, and I did very well. But that's not sustainable, and it's not something that's very enjoyable. And so simultaneously, I started realizing when I was getting my license, I was watching and learning from these other people on YouTube. Well, maybe some people want to hear what I've done with Instagram and door knocking to succeed, and maybe it will help them. And that was back in 2017.
Okay.
And so I shared what I did well, and people really wanted to know more about the social media side of things. And so I hated social media growing up. I was terrified of the camera, petrified of putting myself out there. But it was either I do that and get outside of my comfort zone, or I stay broke. And so I went all in on it, and people wanted more, and I just kept giving them more. And then, fast forward 3 years later, the opportunity of EXP presented itself, which was life-changing because all these agents from all these other states, countries, provinces were saying, how can I get more? And I didn't have that opportunity or the vehicle. And so I came over here, and, within my first 2 years at EXP, the same YouTube strategies for production helped me become the number one personal attractor globally at the company.
Huh. It's funny you should say that about your kind of fear of the camera, right? And having been an engineer, maybe that makes all the sense in the world. But everybody, or at least the vast majority of agents, whenever we talk about social media, that's one of the first objections they have is, I don't like the way I look. I don't like the way I sound. Sounds like you dealt with that. How do you deal with that?
Yeah, well, the how do I look, how do I sound is always an interesting thing. I've trained over 7,000 agents, and I hear that every week. And the quirky, interesting part about that is how you sound and how you look in front of your clients in real life. So there's, when people are fearful of that, I'm like, unfortunately, it is what it is. I don't like how I sound, and half the time I don't like how I look either, but that's what you're getting in person. So why not amplify that through video and just realize it is what it is? Now, the real answer to that, which is far more important, is having clarity on your why and understanding why you're doing this. Because for me, if you don't have a burning desire to achieve something that's going to make you want to do it, then you're never going to do it. And so for me, when I had 2,500 in my bank account, when I wanted to retire my parents, when I wanted to have a better life than what I was exposed to growing up in terms of time freedom and financial freedom, there was two options. It's either I do whatever it takes to go get that, or I wallow in my sorrows and I stay put. And so for me, every time I didn't want to record a video, I thought about that day I could retire my parents. I thought about that day I would be able to go on my dream trips. I thought about those days and said, either I do this and those days are a potential reality, or I don't do this and I stay stuck. And so for me, it was just that unwavering desire where there was purpose behind the videos. And so if you just approach content with the mentality that most do, is posting to post, or just saying, I've been told I have to do this, so I should probably do this, it's going to fall on deaf ears. You're going to hate doing it, and you're going to be inconsistent and burn out. But when you know that every video you put out is one video closer to achieving everything you've ever wanted, knowing you're one great video away from achieving all of that success, it it applies a different level of pressure and a different desire to that content. And that shows through in the content as well, in terms of the passion in which you deliver those messages.
It's well said. It's funny too, in interviewing a lot of agents like yourself who leverage social media, the one thing I hear repeated over and over and over again is almost, it's kind of a come list me, come sign me, buyer rep agreement kind of thing, because something strange about this medium, where you see some actor or actress in your favorite show on the street and you feel like you know them. And that's what I've heard time and time again from the agents who are social media agents is, yeah, I didn't necessarily like the way I looked. I didn't necessarily like the way I sounded, but it habituated people to me such that there weren't many questions of, how many homes have you sold or how credible are you or anything like that. You're kind of part of their household, so to speak, when you show up, because they've already been looking at you and hearing you and all of that. Did you find the same thing for you in your practice?
Yeah, when I was still in production, there was endless listing presentations that would go in, and the general consensus and the feedback would be, I feel like I'm talking to a celebrity. And at that point, I want people to realize I had under 1,000 subscribers and I was 2 years into the business. So I wasn't somebody with influence or a big following or these vanity metrics. I was just doing what others weren't willing to do. And like you say, the perception is astronomically different when it comes to the public facing side, because they do look at you as an authority, as a figure, as something of influence. And to them, that's huge, because agents need to understand that all that an agent focused YouTube video is the answer and solution to your client's potential problems. And so when you think about it that way, a lot of agents are not just fearful of, the how I look, how I sound. They're fearful of, well, all of these people are going to write negative comments, right? And so you have to understand that your friends aren't watching these videos. Random people don't sit down at the end of a day and instead of watching Netflix, they decide, I live in Toronto. Maybe I should just scope out for fun what it's like to buy or sell a house in Calgary. Like, people don't do that unless they're actually interested in doing it, meaning the only people consuming your content are potential clients. And so it is really critical to look at that component of the credibility aspect of it. And you don't need that big following. I've helped agents with less than 200 subscribers do 100,000 a month. And that's massive. But everybody thinks that you need these big vanity metrics. And I think, hopefully the conversation goes in this way, but with AI, it's making YouTube even more important than ever for reasons I don't think the average agent, especially the average strong producer, is even thinking about.
Okay, well, now I'm curious. What do you mean by that?
So let's unpack this. The first thing is realizing that YouTube just demonetized all AI generated content. So what's happened? There has been this wave of agents that have been waiting for the overnight success, the easy way, right? Which has been, well, AI is getting so good. What if I could just use something like HeyGen in order to create AI avatars and it's going to do the videos for me? You know this more than most people, Brian, which is the number one skill set that you need in real estate is communication. Leveraging AI, all that is written communication. Input in, output, the better the input, which is your written communication, the better the output is, which is the essence of prompt engineering. But there's 3 layers of communication: written, nonverbal, which is your body language and your tonality, and verbal, which is your delivery. Well, the number one skill set when it comes to leveraging verbal delivery is video content. So here's what's going to happen for agents, and this is why there's going to be a sort of parting of the seas, if you will, with AI, is that there's going to be agents that are waiting to leverage AI for their YouTube videos, and they're going to have these gorgeous videos, perfect delivery, incredible script. It's going to sound unbelievable until they get to that buyer seller presentation. And they don't sound like that, and they don't deliver like that, and they can't speak with that confidence and that tonality and that clarity. It is going to immediately break trust with every agent that has not developed verbal delivery as communication who's relying on AI. And so what's happening is you're seeing this massive opportunity to be able to develop this skill set, and YouTube is the best way to do that in order to essentially gamify what nobody else is willing to do, or very few are willing to do, in this era of people waiting for the easy way. So if you're able to develop this skill set, then you're going to be miles ahead of the other agents that are going to ruin their personal brands by improperly leveraging artificial intelligence. And one more perspective that I think will help a lot of people is one of the biggest objections I hear when it comes to YouTube, especially strong producers, is the perfectionist. Right? And so what they don't want to do is they say, I'm not going to put out content. I'm such a perfectionist. Look at my listing presentation. Everything's dialed. I need my videos to be perfect. Well, I always say the concept done is better than perfect, which is kind of easy to internalize. But the way that I like to help people better understand this is, there's a company here in Calgary that's globally known, and they make custom live edge wood tables. Why do people like live edge wood tables and pay anywhere from $20,000 to $100,000 for a live edge wood table? They pay for the imperfections. If you look at anything that's handmade, there's imperfections in that. And oftentimes those are the most expensive things you can buy on the market because somebody did it and there's imperfections. So humans are wired to value and connect with imperfections. Yet the agents that aren't taking action are convincing themselves the only way I could put my content out is if it's perfect. But you probably see this all the time, which is anytime you see a video that comes out or lands on your screen and it's so polished, it's so perfect, you immediately have a trigger and you say, that's an ad, I'm running away. I don't want that.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, and don't you think the medium kind of begs for not doing that? So what's interesting is I've trained a lot of trainers, presenters in my time. And the number one thing I tell them is, because a lot of people have stage fright, right? And what I tell them is, you're the one worried about how you look, right? You're the one worried about your dress, your hair, your makeup, whatever. They don't care about that. They didn't come there because they wanted to see a presenter. They came there because they wanted to hear information that was going to help them in their business, right? Likewise, with YouTube, they're not there because, no offense, you're a lovely looking man, but that's not why people are going to tune into your videos, right? I don't suppose you're putting yourself out there on thumbnails and bikinis and things like that to try to get people to click on your videos.
Thank God.
Yeah, right. So, they're there for the information. Period. And production value doesn't really matter, does it, in your opinion?
Production value doesn't matter except for audio. And so it's important to have clear audio when it comes to YouTube. That is pretty much it. Now, for the producers, this is, I think, is an important concept as well. And this is what I coach a lot of the people that I've worked with, is saying, you're honestly, in my opinion, doing a disservice to your local market by not being on video. Let me explain that, right? That's not me coming from a perspective of, I want everybody to do this. I genuinely think everybody should do this for the reason I'll explain. Every agent I've ever met has raised their hands when I've asked them the question, have you ever come across somebody where they say, like, 4 or 6 months ago, they sold a house or bought a house, and they were like, wow, if I just knew you, I would have had such a better experience because the agent that I worked with was terrible or dropped the ball or poor communication or didn't deliver. And they say all of these negative things about the agent. But if I just knew you, it would have been a better experience. And so what I've realized in business, entrepreneurship, real estate, is that the only way that you can ever enforce change is if you take full, utter, complete ownership of every one of your actions and everything in your business and your life. And so anytime that happens, I say to the agent that did not get the business, that's your problem. That is your fault because you weren't visible enough. And if they knew about you, then they would have had a better experience. Maybe they would have saved more money. Maybe they would have made more money. Maybe it would have been less stressful, but they didn't know about you. that is your fault. And so for any of these, agents that are looking to take their business to the next level, we've transitioned from the, 90s, early 2000s, where it was a business of the more people the more deals you do, to now we're in an era with social and AI, to the more people who know you, the more business you do. And that's why visibility is so important, where you should be able to amplify your message and say, hey, if I'm an icon level agent, that means I do go above and beyond. I do have incredible quality of work, and I do demonstrate excellence in my quality of service. Well, everybody in my market should want and deserves that. But the only way they're going to find out about that is if you're visible. And when they're searching, you meet them before they identify another agent. And that's why being a search-based platform, right? And I don't think many people know this. The difference between YouTube and Instagram, for example, Instagram is great for building your brand, but it's an interest-based platform, which means people are going on there to scroll for things they find interesting. Mm-hmm. If you look at YouTube, it's an intent-based platform. They're finding things, they're searching for things, knowing 70% of the searches start with how to. They're searching with intent. So when you can meet a potential buyer seller before they've identified another agent, you win that every time. But you have to be visible. And this is the easiest, quickest way to make that happen.
Okay. Can we dive in a little to strategy and approach? I'm curious, when you think about YouTube, for your sales business or for some of the agents that you help coach in YouTube, are we going after buyers? Are we going after sellers? Does it depend? Who's that audience that we're going to go after on YouTube?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it really depends on the type of content that you're putting out, but I'll kind of take you on a very predictable linear journey of what's the easiest way to get started.
Okay.
Buyers are always the easiest, right? And so if I think about this and I look at the data of the people that I've worked with and just data across the industry as a whole, relocation buyers are kind of like the FSBOs and expireds of the YouTube world. It is the easiest, lowest hanging fruit, but most times they also have to sell before they buy. So if you're able to have the right flow and sequence of your funnel, well, you can meet with them before they've identified a selling agent, which based on EXP having, 90,000 almost agents, you can refer that out. And so you can get the sell side with the buy side. Historically, buyers are going to be the easiest with YouTube. And I always recommend people to start there in order to get the most consistent lead flow. Unbeknownst to most people, the videos that attract the most sellers are going to be high quality property tours. And that goes against what most people think, because they think, oh, property tours is just a bunch of buyers looking at home. No. Property tours are only to build your personal brand and to develop a catalog of your quality of work. It is extraordinarily rare that you're going to put out a property tour and somebody buys the home that's on that property tour. They're going to take interest in it, but they want something different. But what you'll see is a lot of the agents that I've worked with that are very seller focused. You've interviewed people like Suman. All of his sellers come from his property tours because they want that quality of representation for their property. So the average agent, makes the misassumption that they need to put out all this seller focused content, but that's often too late by the time they've identified an agent. So when you're getting started on YouTube, I always recommend the lowest hanging fruit, which is going to be relocation focused content and local lifestyle, and blending that with high quality property tours where you are in the video. Knowing it's a branding exercise, the agents that are just sending a video team out there and saying, hey, have at her, that doesn't do you justice, right? It's all about building your personal brand, which means you have to be in the video.
I want to ask you so many things, but you mentioned something, and I'm curious. I was going to ask you about profile setup. You said, click my profile, and it sounded like you had some sort of Calendly or some similar type of, book an appointment thing. Is there any sort of formula or guidance about setting up my profile properly to succeed?
Profile or description of a YouTube video?
Well, both actually. The channel page, I say profile, but really we're talking about YouTube, so the channel page. But then also any particular video, any guidance there?
Yeah, definitely. There's a few elements to this. So let's unpack it. There's your about section, then there's your actual like YouTube homepage, and then there's your YouTube description. Those are three things that can be optimized very strategically to increase your lead conversion rate. And so if we look at the about page, which is your about section where you should get started, there's a couple things that are critical. You talked about SEO. Well, I would write a bio and then you can put it into, Claude or something like that and get it to rewrite that bio in an SEO optimized way. Because when you start looking at, for example, writing the fact that you're a residential realtor in, Austin, Texas, or top real estate agent in Austin, Texas, right? A top real estate agent. If you're an icon level agent, you are. Well, that could potentially rank for when buyers are searching or sellers are searching for a top real estate agent in Austin. So I always encourage, make your bio SEO optimized. The second component of that is going to be the links, right? And so there's a couple of links that you should have. Your calendar link, you should have your KV, whatever CRM of choice you've decided, and the IDX website feed search that you can link there. I would encourage you to have that. And then I also encourage to have a lead magnet. And so if your focus is relocation, you should use something like Gamma and build out a relocation guide that you can connect to your CRM of choice and use that in order to generate leads. So website, also your KV Core lead magnet, and making sure that I encourage you to cross promote your Instagram, for example, because oftentimes people will find you on YouTube and validate you on Instagram. They say, is this guy or girl legit? Right? I want to see their personal side, because on YouTube, you're usually not showing the behind the scenes of your family, your passions, your hobbies, but that's what connects with other people. So I always encourage to cross promote. So those are some of the key elements that should be in your about section. Now, when you look at your home screen, there's a couple critical things, and it's a science that most people underutilize. You've obviously got your banner at the top. You have your profile picture, which should be consistent across other profiles. But then you've got a couple things. Number one, your featured video. Your featured video should be a video that's tailored toward your niche. So if your niche is helping land and ranch, that video should be about how you help people with land and ranch. If it's relocation buyers, it should be about that, because you have two choices there. You can choose one video for new subscribers, people who are not subscribed, and one video for current subscribers, which should always be your most recent video. So that should be the video that shows up at the top. After that, you can insert playlists. And when it comes to playlists, you should have a playlist about your niche and your target avatar, and link that below. So that is a seamless customer journey where people can see a video about who you help, then they see playlists riddled with content about helping those individuals. And so that's how I recommend optimizing your home screen. And then there's the description of your videos. Okay. Similar to Instagram, you have on Instagram, you can click see more and you see the whole description. Mm-hmm. Well, on YouTube, you see a few lines above the fold or before people click see more. That is where you want your call to actions. So very similar to your about section, the first call to action should be a form of contacting you. A Calendly link is usually ideal. The second and third, the blend of other ones, should be in no specific order. I'll link to your CRM of choice IDX page for people to search, and also a lead magnet associated with your niche. Typically, it's ideal to have two lead magnets, one for relocation buyers, one for local lifestyle for locals that are living there. They want a local guide about the top restaurants, top cafes, top things to do, top events happening this year, that type of stuff. All can be created in a few minutes. But it's important to have your call to actions at the top, then the description of your video, and then if you want to kind of go to the next level, you can add timestamps, if you will. But all that matters the most is having those call to actions at the top.
Okay. I know we're tight on time here. One question that I know somebody's going to have when they hear you say all that is about the editing. I'm like, is this something I should be learning how to do myself? Is there a tool out there? Should I be using services like Fiverr or things like that? How do you deal with editing?
Really depends on your budget and your level of skill set. And so let me break down kind of the three different categories, if you will, which is no money, a little bit of money, icon agent. No money, a lot of people that we're working with use Captions or CapCut. The AI tools, especially on both of those, are very good. You can cut out the dead spots, add in audio, do your transitions, and that's fantastic. In the beginning, for my first 2 years, I edited all the videos myself because I didn't have the budget. Then you graduate to a little bit of money. I always reinvested 30% of every commission back into my business. And so Fiverr is a good option. A better option is if you have like a VA that is dedicated to doing this. But if you're doing something on Fiverr, the most important thing is to give exact examples of what you're looking for in a realistic way. Like for me, I spend $5,000 a month on my YouTube team. Well, don't give them my video and say, I want it like this for $50 a video. It's not going to happen, right?
Yeah.
So be realistic, and you don't need this level of quality when you're getting started. But a lot of times people use something like Fiverr, they'll get back an output that they're disappointed in, but you didn't give them an input reference point of what you want it to look like. So again, that is really critical. But over time, the ultimate goal is to have somebody full-time on your team that does this, because it is a lot of work, and everybody at an icon level capacity should have a social media manager, because when you look at your dollar per value per hour activity level, it is far beyond when you start looking at doing the thumbnails, doing the editing, doing the posting, doing different captions for all three platforms. There shouldn't be an icon agent that doesn't have a full-time social media manager taking care of all of that, because it is leagues below your pay grade.
Yeah. And, I think people might rebel at the thought of the cost, but then think about how much money you spend on alternate forms of lead generation. And this is a major form.
Yeah. And to be completely honest, like a proper full-time social media manager will be anywhere from $1,000 to $1,500 a month. That is pennies compared to if you take those hours and close one more deal, right? And so we just have to look at that opportunity cost.
Yeah, we leverage virtual assistants through the university to do a lot of the editing of our videos. We also have on-staff folks as well. They can do more detailed, finer work, but our VAs are giving her a run for her money. They're pretty dang good.
Yeah.
All right, Mike, I know we're running out of time, and I've got 10,000 other questions, but I want to just say thank you for doing this for us. We really appreciate you coming on, sharing your hard-won wisdom with the agents. If somebody has a question for you based on some of the things we talked about, how can they reach out to you?
Yeah, definitely. Instagram DM is probably the best way to get a hold of me. Let me know that you're with EXP, because I don't answer all messages, but if you're with our beautiful company, I will. So send me a DM on Instagram, Mike@Mike_Sherrard. And I'm always happy to help, right? It's a golden opportunity. I've seen what this platform can do to change so many lives. And if there's any little, tip, trick, or strategy I can help you with to change your life, like that's why we're here. That's why we're doing this.
All right, man. Well, hey, thank you again. We really appreciate you.
Thank you as well.